So when you walk into the building, you get LED slapping you right in the face when you're actually walking into that venue. So it's a cool installation, because if you are a season ticket holder and you get to your seat by walking through that lobby, you're going to get some game day content that's really hitting you right when you get to the building.
Hello and welcome to the Daktronics Experience Podcast. I'm Justin Oxner here with Matt Anderson. Today we're joined by Ryan Kuzman, Regional Sales for Large Sports Venues at Daktronics. We're going to talk about some Daktronics ongoing and recent projects, including those at K-State and Mizzou, and also what Ryan is seeing on college campuses currently. And we're here today with Ryan. Ryan, how you doing?
Doing well, guys. Good to be with you.
Good. Matt's here too. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing good. 6 feet away.
All right. And Ryan's here to talk about some college sports projects that we've got going on, specifically in his area that he's a sales rep for. But first, Ryan, can you start with your origin story and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I started at Daktronics in 2004 and started working right away in the college and sports market, or the college market, working with the folks out in California and the Rocky Mountain region, to be honest, is where I first started with Dak. So I have a quite a long history with Daktronics going back that far. Just about 8 years ago, I started working in the North Central region here in Kansas, Missouri, and Illinois is my current territory. So I generally handle all the college and university sports markets in that area, as well as stadiums and arenas, some professional teams, but that's really my focus right now. So
cool. And I think today, Ryan, we're going to be talking about some different things that you've been involved with for these recent college projects. And one we wanted to call out and maybe start with today was K-State. The university is upgrading a lot of different video displays and audio coming up here. Could you maybe start to elaborate a little bit on kind of what's going on there?
Yeah, so we have a long history at K-State going back into the early 1970s, actually. They actually purchased one of our first mat side displays back in the early 70s. So wow. The history goes back a long ways with K-State. And I tend to bring that up whenever I'm on campus with those guys, and they kind of enjoy that portion of it. But yeah, we've had a very long relationship with those folks at K-State over the years. A lot of ADs have come and go, but Gene Taylor is there now, a good friend of Daktronics. And we started to discussing this project that has come up, which is what they call the South End Zone project, is kind of what it's been known for. It is a complete renovation of their South End Zone that's happening as we speak this summer. Okay. They kind of did some demo down there and started the project this summer. But going back even further, we did a project on the other end of the stadium that's very similar to this end of the stadium on the north side. So this project has kind of been a long time coming, and it has several different aspects to it that I can certainly talk about. So
it's kind of a multi-phase project there, and you're talking about the football stadium first. Was there other sports that were receiving new equipment at K-State as well?
Yeah, so we started several years ago talking about their baseball stadium, and they wanted to do a renovation to their baseball stadium. Going back about 5 years ago was when the discussions kind of started there. They wanted to renovate their press box and completely kind of do a complete overhaul on the seating area of the press box. The scoreboard was something that was discussed as well in that project. We had an installation there of a standard scoreboard with a message center that we'd done about 20 years ago that was still in operation. So about 5 years ago, they started to call us and ask us questions about video and things like that. Baseball was becoming more of a prevalent purchaser of video boards at that time, so it was becoming the norm at that point. A lot of Big 12 schools were moving in that direction, so they wanted to get a jump on that as well. We started those discussions then. At that time, we just replaced their standardized scoreboards, so just kind of juiced it up a little bit, gave them a little bit more of a new technology on the scoreboard side. But they didn't decide to do the video at that time. So it kind of got tabled. And then a couple of years ago, it gained legs again, and we started to discuss and put together some options for adding a new 15 HD video display to their baseball venue, which we completed just this the last fall, I guess, is when it was completed. So we were looking forward to seeing it lit up, and we got it all up and running for their first game, and then they canceled sports for baseball. Mm-hmm. So it was a very sad time, but but we did complete that project, and it's been a great success there. They're very happy with it.
I'm kind of curious that conversation of how it went. Sometimes we have customers that don't have video boards, get one, and they always want help. I wouldn't say consulting, but they want to know what to do with it, how to run it. But when you have a college, right, it's a little different because they may have video in another sport, but then bringing it over to baseball, did you get a lot of questions about like how should we adjust our video presentation when they didn't have one for baseball?
So we did get a few questions about, they wanted to know a little bit more about, what types of content they wanted to use, stats, things like that. Yep. So we kind of gave them a couple of layout looks. We love to do that with our customers so that they understand what they can do with those displays. They can manipulate, different content in different areas, especially with baseball is so stats driven that we were able to give them a few layouts to kind of give them some ideas on how they can utilize their headshots, how they can utilize some stats throughout the game, not just, ball strikes, hits, outs, those types of things, but even more in depth into, and they were very interested in that because it's such a stats oriented sport. So yeah, I think we helped them along. They obviously are very well versed in video and how they can utilize video since they had our products in the stadium at football already, but they certainly were interested in how they could lay out stats and things like that.
So yeah, you're talking about what they can do with these video boards and what they can do over at baseball, and maybe a little different than what they do with football, or maybe similar. From a control perspective, we've heard sometimes they have like a central control room on campuses, and some have different control at each venue. How are they doing that at K-State?
So they have kind of a hybrid, what I would consider a hybrid type of control setup. Okay. They do have a centralized production system that is housed in their football stadium. They can generally run every sport from that control room if they wanted to. However, each individual arena or stadium or ballpark on campus has the ability to be run independently of that if they needed to. So I would call it more of a hybrid. Since they're connected together, they can truly run a show from a centralized location on campus if they needed to, or if they wanted to do something more specialized for that particular venue, they can do that as well if they choose to.
And I'm sure they've got that set up a different way. So in case they have multiple events going on at the same time, they've got the ability to do one and do another and be in a different room and be able to communicate for what they're trying to do for that type of flexibility, because we know sometimes sports seasons overlap. And
especially in colleges, right? Yep.
So they got to be able to do multiple things at one time.
Absolutely. Yep. They have to be always kind of ready for what's coming around the corner. So that's certainly something that they're prepared for.
All right. So that's a look at kind of what was going on recently for their baseball. And you kind of start out the discussion about the end zone renovations at football. Could we maybe dive into that a little bit more and the background behind what's going on there?
Yeah. So that project started to gain some steam. They've always had this dream of kind of extending the football stadium on the south side, since it kind of is adjacent to their basketball arena. So they wanted to utilize more of that space down there for both venues. So they wanted to open it up. They wanted to create a space that was connected so that you could have maybe a club area or a kind of a communal area for season ticket holders / donors or sponsors on that end that could utilize it for both the arena as well as the stadium sports. So that discussion started quite a long time ago, and they started to reach out to architects and other folks to start designing that. And in those design discussions, we had always talked about what we would do, since a lot of their existing audio system as well as their primary scoreboard and video board was on that end. So what were we going to do? So the discussion started, what can we do to make that end look, similar to what the north end looks like? So we started to talk about display locations in the corners, similar to what's on the north end. And then we talked about the audio system and where that would reside. So we were in there early in the discussions to make sure that they were prepared when they walked into some of those meetings and started discussing about what that end zone would look like at the end.
So we're doing the south end zone right now. Is that going to be the exact same size video displays as in the north end zone? Is it going to be like a mirror look, or is it slightly different?
Correct. So those displays will be exactly the same size as the north. So it's going to have a very cohesive feel and look to the stadium. What we wanted to do was create that cohesive, really seamless look rather than have something completely different on the north end and the south end.
Mm-hmm.
We could kind of tie everything together and make it look very, very seamless. So that was the target, and we're in the process of installing those video displays now. The audio system, I believe, is going to start installing in July. So we're kind of fast tracking everything. The building is actually being kind of constructed around our systems as well. So we're trying to get a jump on getting everything ready for the season, because we know that the building isn't supposed to be finished until 2021. So we're kind of working around construction projects, but it's working with some teams that we're very comfortable with, and it's going very well. So.
And you're talking about these renovations that are going on, Ryan, and it's definitely, I'd say that's a trend in the last 5 years, is that when people or schools are renovating their facilities, it's not always about what it used to be, which was increasing like seat capacity because they need to sell more tickets. It's more about these, you said club areas, social gathering areas for fans to get up, move around, and interact with each other, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the trend that we're seeing in college athletics and new construction in particular in college athletics is utilizing space for things that are outside of the bowl, things that are a little bit that aren't necessarily the norm today, are becoming the norm as of this time that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of displays go into areas like clubs, above bar areas, above concession areas, in concourse areas, in lobbies. Those are becoming very prominent right now in college athletics and new construction. We started to see that trend in the Major League Sports division probably, somewhere starting around 5 years ago. We started to see those common areas start to become more popular, that they wanted to see some LED displays in those areas, and it's kind of started to finally bleed into the college athletics as well. So it's a really cool trend, because you can really give, kind of a bland, what I would consider a bland area, like a lobby or, someplace that doesn't get a whole lot of pop. You can really create some excitement by adding a video display or an LED display in those areas.
And the technology in those areas it's still LED technology, but it's got to be slightly different than that's going to be in the in-bowl area, because the viewing distances are just going to be different, right? So there's a slightly different technology for those lobby and closer viewing areas?
Yeah, so we start to see the need or the want for a very high-res type of display. So Daktronics has done a great job of keeping up with that demand of creating a high-res video display that will go in those areas that can be viewable to people that are walking right up to it or very near it. Whereas in the bowl, you very rarely get very close to a video display in the bowl, right? So it's usually way up high, or it's in a place where you don't have to have such a high-res display because you're quite a ways away from it. So the technology is different for those venues, just because you need to have the ability to walk right up to it and have that clear, crisp image that you would expect from something like even a television. So yeah, we've come a long way in the last few years in developing that technology.
Have you seen the technology spilling outside of the stadium itself? Are people installing, like in the college level, are they installing stuff outside, like marquees or something else as people are approaching the stadium?
Yeah, so we also included, just because you said that, we also included a marquee display in this project as well that is out on Kimball Avenue at K-State. So they had a very old Daktronics Galaxy display that had been there for quite a long time. We had always talked about replacing it, but it never quite got to the point where they were going to do it, and we were able to do that as a part of this project. So they actually got some outdoor signage along with what we were doing in the bowl and in the club area. They also were able to include some outdoor signage, and we're seeing that as a trend as well. So, for example, University of Missouri has a billboard just outside of their arena. They also have some signage, around campus as well. So it is becoming a trend, just not in the bowl. It's sprouting out into these areas where we hadn't seen a lot of opportunity before, is becoming very prevalent and becoming very popular for those customers.
Yeah, we've been talking about that a lot lately, with whatever the future is going to hold here for college athletics. We're all, not sure about what's going on, but having displays outside the bowl, and we've had this phrase we were saying before of it's going to be the same game going on, but it's a new experience. And the fact that it's going to be more important for our customers, right, to be able to communicate messages to their fans or patrons than ever before, because whenever any kind of facility starts opening up, whatever capacity, if they're not even if you're a veteran or you're a season ticket holder going there, you're going to need to be able to communicate to that person that there's a lot changed. Maybe there's certain directions they can go now. Stations for sanitizing is what we've been saying, but it's one of those, it's never been more important to be able to send those communications to people, not just when they're sitting in the seats, but on their way into the facility or the event.
Right. And that's a great point, because things are constantly changing for us right now, especially in the current environment that we're in. We're trying to push the envelope on providing as much communication methods to those customers as possible. For example, this K-State project, the South project, also has 2 indoor displays that are going to go in the club area, and they're going to be very large. They're quite massive for the club area that they have. So it's for them to be able to utilize those, just not only for their in-game, they can put obviously their in-game production into it on game days, but on non-game days, they can use those for whatever they want to. They can use those for live feeds to broadcast, or they could use it for campus communications. It can be utilized for so many different things. And in today's environment, it's more important than ever to have a lot of different ways to communicate with people.
So we've been talking about K-State and a lot of their upgrades and things that they've been doing. And then you mentioned Mizzou a little bit, that they had something going on. Is there any other recent projects that had something interesting going on that you wanted to highlight yet?
Yeah, so Mizzou was a good one we finished last year that was a very successful project for us. A very large video display in the bowl, some ribbon displays as well in the bowl. But also in that project, we also included we utilized some areas that we don't normally look to. They have a very nice LED video display in their in their weight room. So what they do is if the coaches wanted to utilize that display, they can walk up to a box, plug in, they can utilize that display and show some game film, or they can show some things that they want to get across to the student athletes right there in the weight room if they wanted to. So they can kind of take over that display if they wanted to anytime they want, or they can just have it run through their centralized control system and just push content that way. So very cool space, very underutilized area where we don't see a lot of LED. That's a pretty cool installation that we put into their weight room area. We also have a huge display, a 3.9 millimeter display in their club area. It's extremely large. They break it up into 3 quadrants, and they utilize it in like 3 different configurations. So they've actually windowed that display out in a way that's pretty cool in the way that they utilize their broadcast technology. And then we also added a display in their lobby. So when you walk into the building, you get LED slapping you right in the face when you're actually walking into that venue. So it's a cool installation, because if you are a season ticket holder and you get to your seat by walking through that lobby, you're going to get some game day content that's really hitting you right when you get to the building. So it's a really cool application and a cool spot to put more LED.
So, even just talking about these 2 projects and talking about the trends you're seeing in colleges, it sounds like people are putting LED displays everywhere that they can think of, or surrounding their venues to connect with people, showing up, coming inside, walking around, trying to find their seat, and even in the bowl. It's just kind of everywhere, and they're trying to tie them all in and maybe give cohesive branding to the entire event.
Correct. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of it in spaces like even for practice facilities, for instance. So these practice facilities at some of these college campuses are absolutely top of the line, enormous, and they bring in recruits too. So they want something that's going to be flashy, something that they can really tout their venues with, their sport with, their schools with, right? So it's one of those things that you put one of these big displays into a practice facility, and it gives that little extra wow factor when that student walks onto campus to say, wow, they've really, stepped up their game. This is really a place that I may want to play out my college career. So you're right. It's not just in the bowl anymore. It's exploded into so many different other areas that we're starting to lead with that more in discussions with our customers now, instead of that always being kind of like the last thing you think of. We're starting to talk about that first, because those are the spots that are getting a lot of eyeballs.
And thinking about these different areas that we've been mentioning, I think that most people, when they hear these areas in the past, they would think that those are reserved for a TV of some kind, right? Maybe an LCD or something. Is there Is there any kind of like conversations that you have, Ryan, when people, what makes them start to think of the LED display now instead of going that route?
Yeah, so that's always been kind of a challenge because LCD and LED are two completely different types of products, right? What we lead with in the discussion on that is always comes down to two things. It comes down to brightness and it comes down to longevity. So LED in those two categories completely surpasses what LCD can provide. So when you start talking with customers and they start asking those questions, it's very easy to show them, what the rate of return on their investment might be for LED as opposed to LCD in that venue. So when we start talking about that with customers, we generally push those two items, especially since the brightness of a LCD TV. Normally you have that in a very low light situation. Think about it, in your basement or in your, living room. You don't really have to deal with, ambient light or light that's going to take away from the brightness of that. But when you're putting these into areas where the sun is prevalent, a lot of windows, a lot of areas, that can get washed out really fast. So you need to have that bigger brightness or that better brightness in order to combat that sunlight. So it's a very good question. A lot of folks, obviously say, well, it's going to be a lot less expensive for me to buy these LCDs, but you can really put that to bed really quick by telling them how long it will last when you buy LED as opposed to LCD. So those two, I would say those two areas are really where the LED display shines.
And I'm thinking, customers being like the college or universities themselves like that. But then I've kind of heard from talking with other sales reps and customers before, though, that, architects love that because now you're talking about whether it's a brand new construction or a renovation. Now, when they're designing it, they don't have to worry about it. Do I have too many windows, like a big windowed area in this entryway, because I'm going to have TVs here and they're going to get washed out. So it almost allows architects to have a lot more freedom in how they're designing these projects, knowing that it doesn't matter how much ambient light is going to be in there. They're going to be able to see what's on those displays.
Yeah, they actually look at that as well as size too. With LED, you can actually manipulate the size. So with LED, you can pretty much go height and width as much as you want. Mm-hmm. With LCD, you are limited to the size of your box, right? So all of these boxes have to fit together in order to give you a, somewhat height and width, target that you're after. But with LED, you can be precise. Like if an architect comes to us and says, well, we need a 9'5" by, 23'6", we have a solution for that. Whereas if you try to plug an LCD into that, like stack them in there, you're not going to get even close. You're going to be a foot off here or 2 feet off there. So It's architects, as you know, or as we've discussed, are precise. They want to know exactly down to the millimeter on what things are going to look like so that when the customer sees it, there's no ambiguity and there's no question as to what they're receiving.
Yeah. And it's not to say it replaces LCDs entirely, right? Like there's always a place for everything. I mean, I'm sure we'd love to put an LED display over every concession area, every area in the concourse, right? So it's one of those, it seems like there's main points of focus in certain areas to put it in. But then selling a network of LCDs still might make sense in certain areas depending on the customer.
And we still provide that service as well. So if customers come to us, we actually have that ability to provide LCD technology in their concourse areas, in their suites. Those are things that Daktronics can help customers with as well. That technology is not going away anytime soon, like you said. Right. So but it's something that we have to be able to provide to our customers when they need it. So that is also, something that Daktronics can provide in our packaging as well.
So we've been talking a lot about the college market and a lot of different applications, different things that Daktronics provides. I want to hear from you a little bit, though. You've been in this since 2004, you said. So sure. What's your favorite college event that you've attended, or what's one of the cooler college events you've gotten to go to since your time with Daktronics?
Wow, that's a tough question because I've seen a lot of cool events and I've been to a lot of neat games.
Maybe something that just sticks out.
I did get to attend the Final Four when I was in Minneapolis. That was pretty cool. It was on my bucket list of things to do. It's one of those things, just like I want to go to the Masters or I want to do the Final Four was one of those things that you want to check off of your bucket list. And I finally got to do it. And it just so happened it was such a contested Final Four. It was really fun to watch and it was really fun to be there. And there were so many other activities that were available to the fans that, there's the college experiences, there's basketball experiences going on in the city of Minneapolis at that time. So as you're walking to the venue, you're constantly bombarded with other things to do. So it was a really cool event. I got to take my family, which was great, and they enjoyed it, and got to have a good time. So that one sticks out to me on the college side. On the pro side, the All-Star game is one of those things that was really fun for me to go visit. So when it was in Minnesota, I was able to go to the All-Star game as well. So those are the two events that kind of come back to me as being memorable events.
The NBA All-Star game?
No, it was the MLB.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when Justin kind of threw that question at you, and I mean, it's pretty hard to come up with a better experience than going to the Final Four. That's definitely something that's on my bucket list. It's that, and there's a variety of other major events that would be kind of fun to go to. But
yeah, and we've been stuck in this podcast bunker for about 3 months now. So hearing about going to an event is always fun.
Yeah, my bucket list right now is anything I can go to. So
I'm with you guys. I'm with you. I'm one of those guys that likes to be in front of customers all the time. And it's a really tough time, but I think we're getting really close to having that ability to get back out and start seeing people and start meeting again with customers and start hopefully going to some events here very soon.
Right. We'll find our new normal, and we'll get to that when we can. But for today, thanks for joining us and sharing everything about the college sports that you've been involved with and the couple recent projects that you've had.
My pleasure, guys. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Daktronics Experience Podcast. Please subscribe at your favorite place to listen to podcasts to keep up with our latest episodes.